This is Counterpoint, and I'm your host, Tanya Granick-Allen. We're back with our current events panel with lots of commentary on the latest headlines. We'll cover the renaming of a Vancouver street, which is being called Reckless. We'll dive into the decision to remove an elementary school bus driver who showed up wearing a pink girl's outfit, and he was not a girl. We'll discuss Canada-US trade negotiations and what dairy supply management may be a hindrance in that. And we'll cover the recent vandalism in a Montreal museum damaging a Picasso. Lots to get through, and join me now are political commentators Brock Stevenson and Hannah Salomon-Vey. Brock, Hannah, thank you so much for joining me today. Lots to get through as per usual. And I want to start actually with what happened in Montreal with vandalism targeting a museum, in this case, a Picasso. Brock, why don't you start us off on this?
So there's a climate change group called Last Generation Canada who calls themselves that, I assume, because they think they're the last generation that's going to live before the climate wipes us out. They've been doing a series of protests in Montreal. They made news recently because the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, which is one of the bigger art galleries in Canada, had a Picasso exhibit, and this group took washable pink paint and smeared it on the painting and then waited until they were arrested or detained and fined with mischief under $5,000. But they've done a series of other protests. They blocked a street. They've done some other disruptive activities in Montreal. They're trying to raise attention for climate change. But these protests of throwing paint or milk or whatever else on classic works of art is vandalism. I don't think it's vandalism under $5,000 because I assume most Picassos go for more than that. And trying to raise attention for your cause may be valid, but the approach seems to be quite wrong. Destroying classic works of art is not a way to make the case to say there's something wrong with our climate. And I think there's groups out there that are really pushing this type of approach, and I think the penalty should be a lot more stringent than mischief under $5,000.
So, Hannah, if someone cannot destroy a classic work of art to get their point across, what should they be doing?
Well, you can hold a rally. You can go and meet directly with politicians. You can do social media activism. There's lots of different ways to get your voice out there. But as Brock said, yeah, destroying classic works of art is not the way to go about it, especially on private property like this. And I mean, we've seen these types of activists in other countries as well. They chain themselves to things. They block traffic. They block pipelines from being built. They block infrastructure like trains and things like that to get their point across. And, they want to be arrested. They want to make a big statement like that. But then, they impede people being able to conduct their lives. I mean, that's the goal. They think that their generation is going to be the last generation on Earth. But I mean, how many other climate alarmists have said that? And we're still here. The Earth goes through periods of warming, periods of cooling. Fossil fuels is not what's destroying the Earth. We need carbon to keep the Earth going. So these people are quite misguided, and I hope they get penalized for this type of behavior, because there has to be disincentives for and punishment for this type of behavior, or it's just going to continue. They're going to get more brazen.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. Brock, to your point, globally there seems to be either attacks on persons with paint or monuments. I recall, I believe one of the Van Goghs in London was destroyed with a can of beans, or not destroyed, but they managed to get it off. And it seems now the trend is because very like priceless works of classical art are always a target for whatever reason. I don't know why.
What does that have to do with climate change in the first place?
Well, it's just like, oh, there's a Picasso, let's trash it. Last generation. So now it seems that a lot of museums are being proactive because they just can't do this anymore. And maybe it's their insurance, I don't know, but they're installing like a very thin glass or maybe a plexiglass in front of the art in the frame, so that when these incidents happen, because likely they will happen again, it's easily to just kind of wash it off rather than touch the piece. Will there be justice here? Will there be an end to these kinds of things? Or is like law enforcement going to be serious about this, Brock?
Canada's not the place where laws get thoroughly enforced, so I don't think that's going to be happening here. Maybe in the US or the UK where there's protests, there will be more serious consequences, but I wouldn't hold my breath in Canada for someone throwing pink paint on a Picasso.
Well, and if they're about preserving the earth, this is kind of a weird way to go about it. I mean, you could be building gardens or things like that, or planting trees instead of damaging things.
Well, I hope it was a low VOC paint if they're going to go that route.
Yes.
So on that note, we're going to pick to another topic when we return from this commercial break.